Welcome to What Do You Want to Do, the show that will hopefully help you figure out what you want to do in life or reconnect you to what you love doing. Each show has a guest who is doing what they want to do, whether it's in their career or in addition to their regular job. Most importantly, we want to help you realize that no matter your age, you too can do what you want to do if you have the will to do it. Now here's your host, Leonard Caplan.
On this show, we're doing something a little bit different. I have my first returning guest, Dorothy. How are you doing?
Hello. I feel wiser and awesome. How about you?
You feel wiser. I feel okay, except my arm is disappearing into the grass here.
Nice.
That's okay. Now, do you feel wiser because you're showing the sky? Is that the story?
No, I'm feeling wiser because we've been through so much over these past few minutes. I've just
Are we going to talk about the multiple takes that we just did?
Yeah,
try to get the show right.
Awesome. I know, right? Well, that just means we care. That means we have passion.
And it means this is making me sweat under these stupid.
Oh man.
So if people have never seen the show before or heard the show before, What Do You Want to Do is a show where I have guests who are pursuing, or maybe dreaming of pursuing the thing that they like to do most in life, whether it's a job that they have or a sideline or a hobby or something that they remember from maybe their last years in high school. I like to do that. I think I'll do that later. And then sometimes they never get to do it. So I guess the show is to remind people that you can still do it, like I'm doing this. I always wanted to be a radio guy, and I hadn't done like exclusively like a mic show like this since 1980 when I was an intern at KISS 108. So this
that's cool. You were an intern at KISS 108. Yeah. I did not know that. Why didn't I know that?
I was an intern there because there was nothing much to talk about. They never let me do much.
Oh, right. And other places like torture you, make you do all their work for free. It's crazy.
Well, I used to work in the news department at KISS, and we would rip and read. We'd have the AP wire. The Associated Press would have a machine in our office. I would tear off the stories. That's how I found out John Lennon was doing his double fantasy album.
Oh, that must have been, that's so cool.
For me, it was exciting because you know what a John Lennon and Beatles fans I am, you know?
Yeah.
And it was an interesting, well, I'll have to tell you stories about that, but not on this show.
No. This show is good for stories like that, though, I think. Because I think that always leads to some kind of inspiration.
Well,
right?
It's true that my two internships, KISS 108 and KBLE TV in Revere, which stands for cable spelled the wrong way, helped me decide on television rather than radio. But that's not necessarily because I didn't like radio. It just happened to be that the opportunities were there when I worked for the cable company.
Checking out some of these shows, I have to say that Sarah Takagi, I'm saying her name wrong, sorry. Sarah Takagi.
I interviewed her the longest, and it turned out to be 3 shows. The first show was very, very mystical. If you listen to that whole thing about how the spirit that she admired was on the stage when she was performing, and it gave a blessing to the CD that she had recorded and to the live concert. That conversation came about when I told her that when I listened to that CD, I think it was called Lavender
Bouquet.
Lavender Bouquet. You get a better memory than I, and I have the album and you don't.
Wow. You're teasing now. I want the album. No.
Well, yeah. When I told her that happened, it inspired this story, and I had no idea that all this stuff, spirituality wise, went into the CD, and that just blew my mind, you know.
Yeah, and she went like after you said that, she went so far down that path. It was incredible, just amazing, and just like one thing after another. Like, oh my God! Then the whole thing about the praying and the saint showing up on the stage. I'm like, wow, That is pretty serious stuff. And
Exactly.
if you had not said that, do you think she would have gotten into that at all?
I don't think so, because why would it come up? You know,
Yeah.
she would have been talking about something more current if I talked to her about something more current. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was
It was
amazing
pretty
because we
amazing.
did get into how she started music, how she followed her brother into
Mm,
jazz and into comedy, and she does so many things
yeah,
that
it's amazing.
that show wouldn't have been blank. That's for sure. Did you see my interview with Pal Osborne, the animator?
Yes, I watched some of it, not all of it, but I like because it's like you have to watch the first one, right? That has like that's the classic.
Mhm.
And it was interesting how he thought he had gotten off easy because he had supportive parents and it was easy for him to follow his dream. I thought that was interesting.
And not many people say that. Not many people at all. Usually it's the other way around, that parents are sometimes the inhibitor of
Yeah.
things like that, especially if the parents are older. They want their children to survive. They want them to settle for a professional career or a money making career. And, you know, people didn't usually think about being happy years ago, as funny as that sounds.
Dan Klein, what do you think of that must have been fun to interview him.
Well, it's interesting because I worked with Dan many years ago when he was in high school. We wrote comedy skits together, and we did a show called Week in Review / 4 Weeks in Review. And I didn't expect the interview to go the way it went,
Yeah, why is that?
because he talked for the whole time, and that's a tricky thing when the guest. There's two problems when you do an interview show. One is when the guest doesn't say enough. And the other is when the guest says, and I don't want to say he said too much, but there were no pauses, there were no openings for me. You know what I
Ooh,
mean? And he
yeah,
may be
yeah.
used to that. Well, actually, no, I'm not going to say that. I was going to say he may be used to that from his Seven Investing show and from his Motley Fool show that he used to do, but he's always bouncing off different people. But I did ask him a very open ended question at the beginning, and he just went with that for pretty much the whole show. I think I asked maybe 3 questions on that show. I'd like to have him back on and maybe steer the show in a different direction, in a few different directions the next
Yeah,
time.
yeah. What do you think of what he said though? That I thought that was pretty impressive or pretty amazing how he said, I owe all of this to you.
Oh,
All
well, that's
six.
always very humbling.
Mhm.
It's hard enough in person when you're not doing a show. You love hearing that stuff, but it's very hard to think of a response that doesn't sound egotistical. You know,
Like, yeah, like, yes, you do.
first
Or
of
something like
all,
that.
First of all, you don't want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Second of all, I noticed that on certain shows here, when I didn't say thank you, I didn't say it purposely because I didn't want to keep saying thank you and sound like thank you, thank you, thank you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
When you don't say thank you, it sounds arrogant. And you think of the audience saying, why isn't this egotistical host thanking his guest for saying that?
Yeah, right.
So I punish myself when I do these things. So no, it was very, very nice
Mm,
that he said that, and I guess he meant it. So it's very
yeah.
humbling to hear that.
Had you not heard from him in a while? Like, was that the first time you had talked to him for a while,
Well,
or?
we talked to get ready for the show, and we talked. I think we talked a lot after the show.
But
We're
nothing up until that point before.
not like that. I mean, that was like having him here. You know, that well, me being there.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Maybe he was just super excited to see you and just had to blurt all this stuff out, you know?
In
'Cause he's
person, that's the thing. That's exactly. So, everything that goes wrong on this show, I'm going to take responsibility for it because I set the tone for this show. So
mm,
I should have broken. I should have been more aggressive and broke in and changed the direction if I wanted to. And I'm grateful that he was on because he has a lot of exposure. He's very busy every day. he does one of those shows every single day, two
Wow.
sometimes, and they're live.
Oh,
And
what
he doesn't
live? Wow,
stumble.
wow.
He doesn't do multiple takes. It's just absolutely amazing what he does.
That's
He
awesome.
has all this great advice. He's constantly researching along with his colleagues what to say, you know.
You were talking about this is another interview. You were talking about how boys would wear tap shoes in the hallway to be scary.
Now, who was I talking to when I was talking about that? I remember the
Ooh, we'll have a test. She was a dancer. She is a
Oh, that
dancer.
was, yes, that was my friend Victoria. Yes.
Yes. Ring, 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 ring. Yeah, and she was talking about how she loves tap shoes, and you're like, then you broke into this story about God, boys wearing taps to seem threatening and mean in your school.
It was a Revere thing. Now, not to say that bullies are exclusively from Revere, far from that. But a particular person that I knew used to do that, wear taps. That was a sign of toughness around where I lived, around my
That
city.
is so, I'd love to know where that comes from, like where they,
I don't know. I mean, it was,
it's so
I mean, this
bizarre.
particular person used to kind of, and this is in the Beatles' time, he was still greasing his hair and he had the
Yeah.
taps and he wore like a Fonzie jacket, not a leather one, but the first one, the light blue one, like a windbreaker, you know? And it was just an image, I guess, you know?
So weird.
That was
That
weird.
was so bizarre. That's what I was like, I have to ask Lynn about this because that's just so, imagine if someone tried to do that now.
When I think of taps, I don't think of dancers like Victoria. I think of this person, which
That's crazy.
wasn't a very good memory, let me tell you.
I thought the show was more about reaching people who you want to inspire people to stick to go for their dreams, even though they might have chosen a different
Yeah.
path with their life. I'd like to hear more people like that, because a lot of the people on here are like, were encouraged, their parents encouraged them. They had this inspiration from the start. Their parents had something to do with them becoming creative and allowing it. I'd love to hear more about more people who had to face struggles.
So that's interesting because you're thinking of that, of the show in a little bit of a reverse way, the way I think of it. So, and I'm going to explain that. So the way I think of this show is somebody is looking for a podcast and they are a creative person or a person that maybe all they have in their lives is they're making a living, which is great, and they have their family, but there's something that they dream of doing and they only remember doing it maybe when they were young, or they had an idea of doing it and they never got to do it. So if they look at my library and they see an animator, they see a stand-up comedian, they see a pianist, they see a dancer, they see a financial advisor. So I try to gear my questions toward these accomplished guests to let them know that these people are no different than they are, except they went through what the listener didn't go through yet. They pursued what the listener is dreaming of. So I would like to have a library of shows where anybody who wants to do something will be able to find a show. Here is a luthier. That was my friend who made guitars and stringed instruments.
Yeah, that was
They
cool.
might not be able to find that anyplace else. So there's a luthier. I'm going to listen to that show. I'm going to watch that show. Maybe I can get an idea of how to follow in this person's footsteps.
Well, all right. So that's cool. So you want this to be like a catalog of, I see what you're doing. I see that.
So like, people who they want a little bit more out of life, hopefully they can go to a show like this and be inspired.
All right. So they're ready. They're ready to be inspired. They're ready to reach their dream, and you're going to help them do it, which is nice.
Right. Now, when I pick a guest for this show, I have no idea whether their parents encouraged them or they didn't encourage them.
No, and it's interesting that it's nice to see that there was a good handful that did.
If
Of-
you remember, Sarah was forced to play the piano.
Yes,
So
the
she has a
Japanese culture.
love-hate relationship with the piano. That's why her outlets are jazz and comedy. So she doesn't fall into that pattern that the other
No.
ones do, you know?
Yeah, I remember her saying it was a fundamentally different way of life than in the USA. So kind of explains why they do it. But you know what? It's so interesting.
I
Anyways,
hear things about, Japan, China, and even Russia that were with students, with their children, preparing them for life is much more strict than we have.
yes.
And I'm struggling because I don't want to make a judgment on it, but I'm an American and I'm going to have to make a judgment because I'm an American. I'm just going to show my point of view. You don't have to agree with it, or anybody listening doesn't have to agree with it, but it seems like they would take the joy out of, just based on Sarah's experience, if you push kids too hard and too strictly, you're going to take the joy out of something, even if they love that thing, even if they would normally love it, So there's got to be a happy medium between dedication and giving the kid a break,
Yeah, if they're not making it fun, for them.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not going to have
Could
fun in
just,
life, what's the point?
yeah.
You know,
Hmm.
that's the way I
Definitely.
think. Anyway.
Especially when it comes to creative things like music. It's not supposed to be. I mean, I know uh, music is help people with their all ranges of emotions, but as a kid, I think you should learn that music is a beautiful, enjoyable, lovely thing to go to when you need to, but not make it the way they do. That seems kind of harsh.
Right. I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
So, what profession, Dorothy, would you like to see mentioned on this show that I haven't interviewed people about?
I think you've covered all of them. No, there's no.
Well, there's no such thing as that. There'll be some overlap because, let's face it, in my life and in my career, I meet actors and directors and cinematographers, dancers and singers, and people in the arts. But there are more things
Yeah, you've
besides
definitely.
the arts that can be a career as well.
That's very true.
Dream of.
Like you had Andrea with her dogs.
Yes, yeah. Now that's a very good example because that's a dream. I'm sure she couldn't have done that when she was a kid. I mean, what parents are going to let their kids foster animals? And I mean, I don't know. Maybe they did. I don't know. Maybe that's what she
Yeah,
got.
I
But
think there's nice.
usually you don't do that until you're on your own. And she's very successful. She has a real estate business, and she does this very giving thing. She does this also with human beings, not fostering human beings, but charitable with human beings. She's involved in the community more than anybody, almost anybody I know. And there are such people in the world. That's another purpose, I think, of this show, that it serves unwittingly. It can show, yeah, if you're cynical and you think that there's no good people out there, look at people like Andrea,
Yes, yes, yep, definitely.
So,
I might be naive, but I think there's more good people than bad.
it's not being naive, so cynical people would call that naive. And it depends where people are coming from,
That's true.
I'm sure there's people who listen or have seen the show who think, well, he's steering all these people to do fun stuff and he's not being practical. What does he know?
Mm,
And, as we know, human beings are very diverse, and we don't all agree on much of
no.
anything in the world.
I would like to know where Quentin Huckley got his Death Star microphone.
Oh, that I couldn't tell you, but I can ask him. I
Yeah,
can ask him.
that's pretty awesome. That's
What did you think now of Quentin Huckabee? That was a multi-part interview in itself. Was it interesting to you?
I did not see the whole thing, full disclosure there, but I like the fact that he didn't go to school for it
Hmm.
and still got what he wanted. I like that. That was cool.
Now, that's a perfect example of the purpose of this show. There are a few people that I know. Some are students, some are young adults, undecided on their career, but they were attracted toward cinematography and they don't know how to break into it. I think if people watch or listen to that show, they'll get a better idea of how to place themselves, you know. And he works with very cheap equipment. That was what was the amazing thing when I worked with him. He can make a fancy lighting fixture out of a candle practically, you know, and do
Yes.
lighting, you know. Very, very, very interesting. So,
So if you had to pick two people out of all your guests to be stranded on an island with, what two would there be?
oh my goodness,
And why?
that's not even a fair question.
I gave you two. I didn't say one. You want three? You can pick three. I know who I would pick first. I would pick the Chris Pantazello, because we're just hanging out on an island. He can show us how to make string instruments.
Well, Chris is one of my best friends anyway, so we'll say that that's one.
So.
And that's a real.
And they can still, I know, yeah, because I mean, it's just for fun. Maybe want someone to make you laugh. So.
What's that?
A comedian, an instrument maker. We'll take the names away. A comedian, an instrument maker, someone who can make instruments, someone who make us laugh, a comedian, and then I don't know,
a songwriter,
someone who's a good cook. Oh, there you go. Yes, then you can write the songs and then play the guitars that you've created. So that would work.
It would be interesting. It would be interesting. Yeah. But you got to remember something about comedians. So
that's true. They are dark. They're very dark. I know.
Comedians can be dark, and some comedians. I met a lot of comedians when I was at Emerson, and believe it or not, they were the most depressed people.
That's a good point. So no comedians allowed.
And I wrote one of my best skits around that. I think you know the skit. I'm not sure if I did it with you, but I did it with little kids at the summer camp.
On the stair.
There was a stairway, and there was a sign on the stairway. And there were people walking up the stairs, and the stairs were so crowded, you couldn't see anything but the people on the stairs. So I panned the camera up, and you see all these sad faces. And then you come to the top, and you see the sign. It says comedy audition. And I played music.
That's so awesome. That's so funny. Oh, like I go to
you get it.
Oh, that's so funny.
And I knew one comedian.
Now, see, that could be how long was it? A video or a picture? You said it was a video.
It's right? It's like a minute. I mean, it takes a minute to pan the camera up the stairs, and of course, I had to make the sign. I did it with these little kids, and I told them all to be really sad, mimicking what I had seen in real life on the real stairway at Emerson.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking if you cut it down to like a few seconds, you could make it an NFT and sell it for $1 million. Really, I think people would think that's awesome because they're looking for like one of a kind works of art. You know?
Yeah.
It'd be fun to get into that. I think that would be cool to interview someone who was into that, the NFTs. You can look that up because then people want to look that up in the catalog because that's an up and coming creative thing to do, and they might want to learn how to get into that. So that'd be cool.
So thank you, Dorothy, for joining me here on What Do You Want to Do? And that was your second time. And like I said, that's a record for the show. And how did you feel about being on for the second time?
I wish I did better, but I feel it was fun. Always learning, always a challenge, but I like talking to you about anything, so it was cool, even though we went off stray a little bit there, but it's cool talking with you.
It's always cool talking to you. Why would I ask you again? So for all of you, next time when we have another guest of whom I do not know at the moment, thanks for joining us. And what do you want to do?